Hi, I'm Chad with Move for Guitar. This lesson is from our series, Music Theory for Guitar. In this lesson, I'm going to do a comparison of the most important minor scales. First off, if you like the diagrams for everything in this series, including the diagrams for this lesson, you can download our free e-guide, Music Theory for Guitar. And this e-guide will be something that you can study and use as a reference for years to come. And like I said, it's free, so there's no reason not to just go download it. This is part 6.8 from our series, Music Theory for Guitar. If you'd like to go back and start at the beginning, you can click the link on the screen. So now that we've covered all these new scales, I want to do a lesson that's dedicated to the differences between the minor scales. And that's because a lot of people really get confused about minor scales and understanding the differences between them. So I want to dedicate a lesson where you can use this as a reference and hopefully get rid of a lot of confusion that a lot of people have. So the scales we're going to look at in this lesson are the natural minor scale, which you should know by now is the Aeolian mode, relative minor, pure minor, any of those names. The harmonic minor scale, the melodic minor scale, the Dorian mode, the Phrygian mode, and then the minor pentatonic scale and the minor blues scale. And we're not diving too deep in this lesson into each of the scales and really where the origins of everything is, but I'm going to touch on them and hopefully it'll give you a good, clear overview of the differences and where to use them. And we're going to start with the natural minor scale, pure minor, relative minor, Aeolian mode, any of those. I'll just call it natural minor for this lesson. And that's because it's the minor scale in its purest form. This is really the minor scale, and then we're going to compare everything back to it. And as you know, this is the sixth mode of the major scale, and it's the relative minor. So if you're in the key of C, C major would be the key of that scale, but the relative minor scale key would be A minor, which is the sixth note away from C. Hopefully you know that by now if you've come this far in this lesson. We covered that pretty extensively. So if you were to look at a piece of music, the key of C and the key of A minor both have the same key signatures, or that works for any relative major and relative minor. And as you know, of course, they share the same notes, but all the modes share the same notes as the parent major scale key. And a lot of times you'll hear someone say something's in a minor key. Almost always they're referring to the natural minor in the relative minor scale key. But there are other minor scales, there's other minor scale keys, so that's confusing when you talk that way, so it's better to specify. But usually when something's in a minor key, it's in the natural minor, in the relative minor key of a major scale key. It's using the natural minor and the harmony from the natural minor, which is the relative minor of a major scale key. And you know that the natural minor is root 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7. It's a very common scale, used all the time, very familiar to our ears, so it sounds very consonant to us. And of course you could use this over any minor chord, any minor 7 chord, or any of the 6 chords from the major scale keys, which we talked about pretty extensively. The next scale we want to look at is a harmonic minor scale, which we talked about in a previous lesson. And that's just taking the natural minor scale and raising the 7th. That gives us a harmonic minor scale. So then we end up with root 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, 7. And the natural minor scale, of course, gave us a minor triad or a minor 7 chord. This gives us a minor triad still with the root flat 3, 5, but then we add the 7th and we end up with a minor major 7 chord, so a different type of chord than what the natural minor gives us. And I'm going to give a little theory about this scale. I don't want to dive too deep because I think it's too much for this lesson, but it's important to at least touch on it. This scale was really created to create a better cadence from the 5 chord to the 1 chord, because as you remember I talked about authentic cadences in a previous lesson being the 5 to 1 or the 5-7 to 1. So if you're in the key of C, that'd be a G7 to a C major chord. And that creates a very strong resting place, going from the tension of the 5-7 chord to resting on that major 1 chord. The problem with the natural minor scale and building harmony out of that is that the 5 chord in the natural minor scale is actually a minor 7 chord. So in the key of A minor, which is not what's on your screen, I'm just talking about the key of A minor, is in E minor 7. So that's the 5 chord of A minor. The cadence you would create from the 5 to 1 in A minor would be E minor 7 to A minor or A minor 7. The problem with this is it's not very strong. This E minor 7 to A minor 7 doesn't sound very strong at all compared to an authentic cadence. So when you play an E minor 7, go to the A minor 7, it doesn't really sound like it's resting very strongly. It kind of sounds up in the air still. So the harmonic minor scale was created because the 5 chord of a harmonic minor scale is a major chord. So it's a 5-7. It's a dominant chord. So in the harmonic minor scale in the key of A, you would end up with an E7 as your 5 chord. So then you would go from E7 to A minor. That would be your 5-1 move. This would create an authentic cadence. So this would be a very strong cadence going from this 5-7 to the 1 minor chord. That would really sound like the A minor is resting now. It's not up in the air anymore. So that's why the harmonic minor was created, to create this strong harmony. And the harmonic minor has strong harmony for the chords. You can create really good sounding chord progressions out of this, and it has really nice movement. And that's what you can think about the name harmonic. It's creating strong harmony. So the next scale that we need to look at is the melodic minor scale. And the only difference between the harmonic minor scale and the melodic minor scale is that you would take the harmonic minor scale, raise the 6 1/2 step from a flat 6 to a major 6. That would give you your melodic minor scale. And now the melodic minor scale was created because the harmonic minor scale, even though it had really strong harmony, had really good chord progressions that would come out of it. The problem with it is that a lot of people didn't like the actual melody of it. It had that strange distance right here from the flat 6 to the 7, which is a minor third distance. It creates a very unique sound, very specific sound, and especially singers, that's really difficult to sing that and deal with that. So the melodic minor scale was created to create better melody. So that's what you can think about the difference between the harmonic minor scale and the melodic minor scale. Harmonic for harmony, melodic for melody. Now creating this, which gives you root 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, this creates stronger melody and easier melody to deal with. The problem is now that it creates very weak harmony. So the melodic minor scale is not a good scale to try and build a chord progression out of. You'll almost never hear that. And that's because when you put all the chords together, they don't really sound like they belong together. The major scale and the natural minor scale, all the chords really sound strong together. Harmonic minor scale sounds even stronger than the natural minor scale because you've created the authentic cadence. Melodic minor scale is really strange when you look at the harmony. If you put the harmony together, all the chords together, it just sounds like it's kind of a mess. So even though the melodic minor scale creates a smoother melody than the harmonic minor scale, it creates a more disjointed harmony. So that's kind of what you have to think about between those two scales. And like I mentioned multiple times now, the melodic minor scale is really used over isolated chords to solo over, or even chords from other scales. It's used to superimpose over it. So you're really using the modes of the harmonic minor scale and the single notes over isolated chords, not the harmony of it, not the chord progressions that you could create out of it. And also, like I mentioned before, in classical theory, the melodic minor scale ascends this way, root 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but then it would descend with the natural minor, so the 7 would be replaced with the flat 7, and the 6 would be replaced with the flat 6. But in jazz theory, you don't do that. You just ascend and descend the same way, and that's why a lot of times it's actually called the jazz minor scale when you do it that way. So the next minor scale I want to look at is the Dorian mode, and you should know by now that obviously comes out of the major scale just like the natural minor does, because that's the Aeolian mode. And the only difference between the Dorian mode and the Aeolian mode is that the Dorian mode has the natural 6, the Aeolian mode has a flat 6. So if you just take the Aeolian mode or the natural minor scale, raise the 6 1/2 step, you end up with the Dorian mode. And this is a very popular scale, used all the time, creates a really nice sound, and it's really heavily used in jazz. But it's not just for jazz, it's used all the time in different types of music as well. And of course this could be used over any minor chord or minor 7 chord, just like the Aeolian mode, or any of the 2 chords from the major scale. The next scale is the Phrygian mode. You know that's just another mode from the major scale. It's the 3rd mode. The Dorian mode was the 2nd mode. Only difference between the Phrygian mode and the natural minor scale or the Aeolian mode is that you would take the natural minor scale, lower the 2 1/2 a step. That would give you your Phrygian mode. And this is less common mode than the Dorian mode or the natural minor. but it's still used fairly often. And the thing about this mode is it really creates a Spanish flamenco or Middle Eastern type of sound because of this root to flat 2. It's a very dissonant, dark sounding mode, but you can get a lot of use out of it in certain styles, so you just have to try it out, see if you like it. But definitely in more jazz type theory, you're going to hear Dorian mode way more often, or the Aeolian mode, the natural minor scale. And then the two final scales I just want to touch on because they're so important. First one's a minor pentatonic scale, which you know is a 5-note scale. Very, very popular scale, probably the most popular for guitars. Very easy to play on guitar and start using right away. Takes out all the avoid notes when you're soloing over minor and minor 7 chords. Can even be used to solo over dominant 7 chords in the blues or jazz or other types of music, but we'll talk about that more later. And the only difference between this and the natural minor scale is that you're going to take out the 2 and the flat 6 of the natural minor scale. That's going to give you your minor pentatonic scale. And the minor pentatonic scale can be used in place of any of the minor modes in the major scale. So over the 2 chord, over the 3 chord, or over the 6 chord. So if you're new to soloing and want to get into soloing, this is probably the first skill you should learn because you're going to be able to start using it right away and sound a lot stronger with it than the other modes or the other scales. And then the last minor scale I want to look at is just the blues scale, the minor blues scale, and that's just taking the minor pentatonic scale, adding in the flat 5, which is the blue note in the minor blues scale. And all that really is doing is creating a passing note with this flat 5. A lot of times it's passing through to the 5 or back down to the 4. It's not the only thing you can do with it, but it's not a landing tone. It's not one you're just going to hit that flat 5 and stay there. That would sound really dissonant. It's really just creating this bluesy movement that you want to pass through. And that's why it's called the blues scale, because that flat 5 is a bluesy note. It's a blues note in the minor scale. So this is probably almost as popular as the minor pentatonic scale and used in place of it all the time. So you just use this in place of the minor pentatonic scale anytime you want to create a bluesy sound. So if you're learning blues, definitely learn this scale first. Most important scale to understand in the blues. But you don't just have to use it in blues. You can just use it anytime you want to create a bluesy sound over a minor chord or even over dominant chords, which we'll talk about later. So that's just an overview, a comparison of all the minor scales. A lot of people get confused about the differences. I just wanted to give this as a reference to quickly look up and see the differences. Like I said, I'll dive even deeper into all of these scales in an upcoming series. This is more of an overview, but it should help you out. Go ahead and move on to the next lesson where I'm going to talk about the whole half diminished scale. And be sure to download the e-guide. All these diagrams are in there, and be sure to subscribe because we add at least one new lesson every day.